Hello, welcome to another VST deep dive. We're deconstructing this preset sound today. Classic Jeff Downes, Asia kind of Yes sound. Check out Drama by Yes, brilliant album. And lots of that kind of little bit of portamento, very 80s sound. So let's have a look at how it's built. And we're going to be looking at all this stuff up here as well today. But first of all, oscillators. So we've got both oscillators in the mix, slightly weighted towards oscillator 1. So let's crank it all the way up. And then we have a look at what modulation effects are being applied to oscillator 1 in particular. So we've got a low pass 1 cut here off the aftertouch. So let's find out what that sounds like. There we go. So we've got the that's set to maximum. So when we press the aftertouch down, it's like doing that. So that's without aftertouch. Now with aftertouch, same effect. Nice and easy. We've also got this. This is an interesting one. E.g. Ample1 VCO1 frequency. So the envelope generator for the Oscillator 1's amplifier, which is this thing here, is just a shape. The envelope is just a shape. It's a graph. It's got an attack length of 65 milliseconds, a decay length of 870 milliseconds, down to nothing, and there's a 50 millisecond release for if you let the key go before the attack decay cycle has finished. So it's just a shape, it's nothing spectacular, and that shape is being assigned to the oscillator's frequency. In other words, its pitch. Now it's very, very slight, really not there at all. If we want to hear what it's really doing, crank it up. So you can hear the envelope. It's really take it to the max. There we go. So that's now drawing a very big, the biggest graph it can. But when we have very subtle numbers, it was like 1/1000th. Down at these very subtle levels, you just get that little nick in the frequency curve on every note. If we have negatives, then we basically draw the envelope the other way around. So it's literally inverted the envelope and now draws that shape. So instead of going up and down like this, we're going down and up like this. Down, up. Very cool, but like I say, lots of these envelopes and LFOs and effects that are being used as modulation sources often have very, very tiny amounts, and they just colour the sound. Lovely. We've got over here the modulation wheel is being used for another LP1 cut effect. So if we just take the rest of that off. Modulation wheel all the way down, all the way up. Yeah, pretty standard fare. So that's oscillator 1. A quick look at the oscillator itself, what's going on. Well, we've got a square wave. These horrible switches that I can never figure out what they're actually doing. I think that's a saw, isn't it? So a square and a saw connected together gives us that nice, rich, harmonically rich sound. We've got basically no LFO to speak of on a sound, on a note of this short duration, because it dies relatively quickly. An LFO that's oscillating at that speed is just not going to be heard. In fact, it's actually at basically zero. If we brought it in, that's what we'd get. Now it's like some Duran Duran kind of thing. So only the low pass filter is engaged, and very straightforward stuff. We've got no initial level, so we just have a regular ADR envelope to worry about. Just applying that little bit of filter. Again, if you want to hear something dramatic, then just crank everything up. Then you can hear the filter taking longer to come in. And we've already had a quick look at the VCA, so we've got this little bit of attack time that's making sure that the note isn't absolutely immediate. I'll just reset the sound so that we get back to our basic and go back to Oscillator 1. So you can hear it's not coming in immediately, and there's a more accentuated effect. We've got our touch response settings. These are all very straightforward. I don't think we need to worry too much about those, but that's how hard you hit the key. That's VCO 1 dealt with. Quick reset of the preset, and now we'll have a listen to Oscillator 2. So this is a much softer sound. So we don't have any saw, do we? No, got no saw. So this is just a square wave. Quick look over here, confirms there's no sine wave either. So we've got something going on with the LFO2 volume in the modulation bank on the aftertouch. So let's have a look at what's going on over here. We've got a sine wave operating at 30 Hz, so it's a pretty fast LFO. If I press the aftertouch down, got that kind of very quickly oscillating reed effect. If I slow it down, speeding up. So it's quite subtle. Oh, maybe not so subtle. But just a little sharpness, a little kind of vibrato effect being applied. We've also got Amplifier 1's envelope again, this time being applied to VCO2's frequency. And got a little bit more of this than the 0.001 we had for the first VCO1, but it's going to have the same kind of effect. We make it loads. So don't forget, this is a negative curve, so it's drawing it basically upside down. If we made it positive, then when you picture the shape that the envelope makes with its sharp attack and then its gentle decay, that's the sound that you imagine, and then just flip it on its head to get that. But there's very, very little of it, and we just get that little bit of pitch movement at the beginning of each note. Another LPF on LFO2, no resonance, but just a pretty straightforward 600 Hz filter, and again aftertouch is being applied to that filter. So when we press the note down, the sharpness, ignore the trill, that's coming from the VCO, but the sharpness is coming from the LP2 cutoff being set to maximum, so basically fully opening the gate on the filter. So that's all the modulation settings taken care of. Then we switch over to multi, and we can see that this is actually a unilast multi-mode, which basically means every time we play a note, we're getting 4 notes being assigned to zone 1, and these are all off. And in this particular case, we don't have any difference of tuning between the 4 notes. They're actually making the same note, but they're all panned. So we get, or the 2 of the sounds are panned, so we get a little bit of width. It's that thickening of the voices that's being used for. If we switched to reset instead, then the sound is thinner. Would allow you to play chords though, which you can't if you're in uni mode. If I play 3 notes, we only hear 1. But of course, having an instrument in mono is absolutely fine. can't do that kind of sound with a polyphonic instrument. Let's just reset the sound. Nice use of the keyboard control. Remember we talked about the keyboard being split into 2 key follow ranges, so a good way to get the traditional effect over the entire keyboard range is to set your low slider slightly down and your high slider slightly up, and you're doing this kind of business. So the low notes are a little bit deeper and thicker, and the high notes have got an extra sharpness to them. Little bit of portamento, 27 milliseconds, just gives us that kind of effect. And we've also got some chorus and a little bit of ponging delay. Beautiful. So I think this is a great example of how to subtly modulate your pitch with envelopes. I think the 2 envelopes are really key to shaping the quality of this sound and making it so rich and interesting. If we set both of those to 0, it's just not quite as interesting a sound anymore. And that's, you know, that's the whole beauty of the CS-80. It's a subtle instrument. I read in an article recently, Vangelis talking about it and saying it didn't sell well, so many people didn't understand it because they didn't understand its subtlety, that it's not all about big brash effects like so many synths in the 70s and 80s were. This is something that you really need to understand the nuances, and I think learning from the best, taking lessons from these presets is the way that I'm learning best how to use this instrument. I think it's a difficult one to make be spectacular immediately without understanding all of these little nuances. So great sound. I'm going to go away and listen to my 80s Yes albums and see if I can dig out an Asia album as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you for the next one. Thanks very much for watching.